Good morning, good morning, good morning, everybody. We are back. Hey, Jazz.
Hi.
The table talk today is going to be about the disability rights. What are we going to do about it? What are we going to do with our government and have them make these rights a little bit more open for our disabled people? So, this topic today was picked by Jazz. So, I'm going to allow Jasmine to go ahead and start the show. Go ahead, Jazz.
Yes, so disability inequality is an issue which society often ignores, but it is an alarming topic. People tend to assume they are ill equipped mentally since they are disabled physically. It has immense effect on people with disability. Disability inequality offers occurs if you are treated less well for a reason that relates to your disability than a person without disability in the same situation. This attitude towards physical and mental disabled is called emblem. Even unintentional emblem is illegal. People's attitude towards the people with disability also about the causes due to which our society discriminates against them are stereotyping, psychological, and discomfort. Lack of accommodation, paternalization, and pity. And stereotyping is one of the main causes in disability discrimination. Some people tend to believe disabled people have limitations and less potential beyond their disability itself.
Okay. Now, the Americans with Disability Act of 1990 explained that the one main argument for accessibility that doesn't get made nearly as often enough is how extraordinary better it makes some people's lives. How many opportunities do we have to dramatically improve people's lives just by doing our job a little better? Now, Steve Krug, he was one of the guys that I had looked at about the original ADA, and it was moved to combat discrimination against the disabled persons by potential or existing employers, government officials, and unions. Now, in order to be covered by the ADA, you have to fit these three descriptions. You have to possess a physical or mental impairment that limits major activities in life in one or more ways. Possess a record detailing your impairment. And also, you have to be regarded as currently having the record of impairment. Now, this law is broken down into various different titles to cover the various different needs. And I'll just go over the titles because I don't want to go into deep with these titles because they can become long. So,
Right.
Title One of the ADA explained is it tackles the discrimination in the workplace. Title Two, it also focuses on elements of discrimination, but in the realm of local and state government. On the Title Three, the amendment came in 2008 from a telephonic communications to the internet, television, and other digital services. Now, it was apparent that with disabilities needed special accommodations, and that's what we were talking about, last time, Jazz. The special accommodations, they're not happening. They're talking about what these people need, but like I said, with my old supervisor, she was not able to come into the office. So when we had meetings, we had to go to like the Holiday Inn or something that had, wheelchair accessibility.
Right.
So now there are common forms of disabilities and for the discrimination. It's refusing to hire job applicants based on their disability, firing or demoting an employee because of their disability, and failing to give the disabled employee the same opportunities. And then, lastly but not least, harassing an employee based on their disability. Now, this goes widespread all over the place. And
Right.
I don't see, there's not no like disabled discrimination police that's going to actually go in and go at it. They have to actually go and get lawyers and fight for this on their own, which I think is unfair. Go ahead, Jess.
So, merely from knowing that a person is disabled, they form wrong opinions about other unrelated characteristics of that person. So, people treat one who is mute as if they are deaf by talking in a high-pitched tone. Sometimes people with drug addictions and certain types of mental illnesses often experiences particularly negative attitudes from other based on beliefs that they are dangerous and have antisocial behavior.
And you know
So,
what, Jazz?
yes,
And not to cut you off, but that in itself too, the people that get disability money because of their self-induced drug addiction. I don't
right.
get. I don't get it. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yes. So, because of these stereotyping people, some people with disability don't seek support for drug addiction, mental illnesses, and issues in fear of experiencing bad treatment, judgment from others. So, even in jobs, few recruiters think that they cannot perform duties like the rest of employees, believing them to be less productive. So, that eliminates them from working in some workplaces because sometimes you don't see disabled people in certain workplaces. I haven't seen one yet.
And that's bad because they
Right.
think that because they're disabled, they
That
can't
they
perform.
can't do the job, right.
Right. And that's
No,
not
just
good.
because you're disabled doesn't mean that you're not mentally here,
Mhm.
mentally stable.
Even like if you go back, what, maybe 5 or 6 years ago, that show Glee, they had two Down syndrome um,
Right.
people in on the show, and those they outperformed most of them actors and actresses that were
Exactly.
quote unquote normal. And to me, a disability, like I said, is a blessing because they don't have to deal with some of the crap that the non-disabled people have to deal with. You know,
Right. But they
and
want to. Some people want
right,
to because they want to live a normal life like a regular person that's walking. Just because I'm disabled doesn't mean that I'm not here. Like they want to be treated as everyone else. Like I said, I have a cousin and she's actually disabled and she's in a wheelchair. But when family members tend to, be overprotective of her and do certain
mhm,
kind gestures, she will be like, oh, like treat me like y'all. Like I'm not, you know what I'm saying? But we
right,
still be like, no, we're going to, pretty much take care of you because that's what we feel fit to do.
right, and then that goes into the category of their barriers. There is not really too many barriers for handicapped people.
Right.
The barriers are put on them from normal quote unquote people. Even with the lines of what you need to be going through to get the disability funds, which I don't
Right.
think is fair. They know they're born with a disability. Why should they have to qualify to get the disability? But
Yeah,
then it
they should
goes,
already be once they're diagnosed, meaning if you're born with it and they know that you're going to have symptoms and you're going to have the qualities of a disabled person, you should automatically, you shouldn't have to fight for it because there is some people that's disabled that doesn't get a check. So,
yeah, yeah. But then and then the five main barriers that most of these people are facing are the physical or the architectural barriers, i.e., not accessible to them, um,
right.
and information or communicational barriers. That's only for people that have like who are hearing impaired. You know what I mean? And even they can still perform. Like I was telling you, my friend, that dude would get on the thing and he would start talking, but he's used to being able to talk to people that can understand him.
Right.
you know and the technological barriers, there is none, because some of them are more savvy with social media or the computer than we are, because they have a lot of time on their hands throughout the day to be able to do those things.
Right.
And the only thing that I think is a main barrier for them is organizational, because they can't actually access some of the things that they
that they want
need.
to do. Right. Right.
Exactly.
So like as far as like going to places and certain things like that. So you just ask yourself, when was the last time you went out to a bar or a club or a lounge or anywhere and then you seen a disabled person in a wheelchair or, I
Mhm.
haven't seen any. I haven't.
No,
So
and
I
see, I
think
think
they feel like they're not even welcome in society today. So
right.
I think that we need to pay more attention to them because they are
Mhm.
people. They're not
Exactly.
they're not invisible. They're
No, they're not.
here and they need to be heard. There's no need to push them under the rug. And then like a lot of businesses, if you're a two floor place, they don't have, certain things for people that's disabled. They might have steps to take. Some places don't have elevators. Some places, just be
Mhm.
more disability savvy.
But and here's their complaint. Well, we have to pay for that. Why can't the government give it to us? The government should not
No,
have to.
right. Because if you're going to pay for it, then those people will come in and you'll get your money back. I'm quite sure.
Oh yeah, definitely. They would definitely get their money back,
Right.
because
From the
it's a tax write-off if they were
right.
smart. And my thing is for the kids, for the babies that have disabilities and they can't get through on certain things. I got a it's a disability audio description, excuse me, that I had found in research. I wanted to play it real quick for you, Jazz, and for the audience as well,
Okay.
so they can listen to some of these things. And now this is from the Department of Social Services overseas. Now listen to the things that they do. One second. What do you want? I want a job that I don't hate. I want to do something that matters, but I don't know what that thing is. I feel like I want someone to tell me exactly what to do. I want to stop feeling like if I take one more step, I'm just going to fall into a pit forever. I mean, what do you want to eat? Oh, pad thai. Yeah, so 2 orders of pad thai. Yep, that's everything. Now, that was an example of a discriminated person that is in a commercial based film. Now, this goes on to tell you a little bit more about what the disabilities are. And I want to share the screen so that we can actually show the audience as to what we are watching, because some of these things are really, really horrendous that we as quote unquote normal people don't get involved. So here you go. It's about 45 seconds.
When you see someone with disability, what do you think?
A girl jumps on a trampoline.
Do you see joy?
A woman kisses her partner.
Connection.
A family plays wheelchair sports.
People enjoying everything life has to offer.
A man lifts weights from a wheelchair.
Do you see the achievement? Physically.
A woman wearing an earpiece skis.
Intellectually.
Women with low vision run meetings and a radio broadcast.
Do you see a fulfilling career?
A model blows a kiss.
Beauty.
A woman sings.
Talent.
A man hauls himself up a track.
Challenge the way you think about disability. See the ability in disability.
That's great. And see, and that's overseas. We don't have stuff like that for our disabled people. Like in the video, it showed, oh, the one girl, she's a model. She has Down syndrome, but she's a model and she was daggone good. Then you had the one woman who couldn't see, but she was running that board meeting. These are the things that our government needs to start implementing, like they did with affirmative action. They mandated and made sure that those people, that were being discriminated against, i.e. us, African Americans, that they got those jobs, that there was something there for them. Go ahead, Jazz.
Okay, so in a study, when recruiters were asked to choose a suitability applicant for employment in a hypothetical administrative assistant position, they ended up giving less employability ratings to applicants with a disability compared to the ones without disability. This clearly shows stereotyping in a few workplaces. So everyone wants to live a normal life without others looking at them differently for a disability that they cannot control. Many disabled people are living completely normal lives when others are physically or mentally struggling to the point that they cannot function normally. People in this world, including our media, does not seem to focus on disabled people who are living life and properly functioning. They would rather keep attention on the ones who are stuck in a wheelchair for the rest of their lives and believe that their life is over. Whether you are disabled or not, we all have the same potential in life as others.
Mhm.
And disability rights are human rights. Everyone deserves to be included and live a full life in their community, accessing the same public spaces, housing opportunities, education, and work as anyone else.
Right. Now, the rights for Americans with disability, they have changed. Um, the Americans with Disability Act, the U.S. Department of Labor, they have some things on their website as well that it shows the Americans with disability, how it prohibits the discrimination against people with the disabilities in several different areas, not leaving out but including the employment, transportation, public accommodations, communications, and access to state and local governmental programs and services. Now, that to me is something that isn't good because they have to go and search out these things. It goes back to what I said earlier. They need something that's automatically given to them, once they are of age, and it should be given to the parents when they're born so that the parents can pass that on to the kids so that, once they get to the adult ages, they will have these things. Now, also, the Americans with Disability Act, they still um, go out like the ACA or the, ACLU. They will go out and look for these things. Now, in 1990, the law became active. The ADA, it was a civil rights law that prohibited discrimination against the individuals with disabilities in all areas of public life, including jobs, schools, transportations, and public and private places that are open to the general public. But that goes back to say also what you were saying earlier, Jazz. You go out to the bars or the nightclubs, they don't have accessibility for most of these people.
Right.
So when, like they said in New York City, when all those bombings were going on, see something, say something. If you see that there's a place that isn't accessible for the handicap, then you bring that up. You write a letter to the ADA and have them come out and see it. But then it goes into the realm of, oh, dang, that's the handicap police. There they come. You feel what I'm saying? So I don't care. I wouldn't worry about it. I don't worry about what anybody says about what I have to say about somebody that needs it. Now, when it goes into the government, what they pay people for disabilities, the average SSDI benefit for a disabled worker was about $1,358. Now, according to the Social Security Administration in 2021, the majority of beneficiaries received modest payments. 85% got less than $2,000 a month. Now, Jazz, you and I, we're able-bodied. What are you going to do with $2,000 a month? And then you got that, So that's another thing that the government needs to get going on. The ACLU currently has a lawsuit against one of the Fortune 500 companies, and I don't want them coming after me, so I won't mention their name. But it's something. There's something that the government is doing secret private investigation on it to find out as to why, i.e., Microsoft, why they are so soft on it. Go ahead, Jazz.
Yeah, so disability discrimination is serious. Discrimination against people with disability is a violation of human rights. It's not just an unfortunate fact of life. Physical limitations and blocked opportunities are not unavoidable consequences of having disabilities. They are products of ambiguous beliefs about disability and failure to take steps to ensure equal access and opportunities. We know how to fix or significantly lessen most of the practical problems that make life harder for disabled people. If these problems aren't fixed or improved, it's because we have directly or indirectly decided not to. Nor is ableism a lesser form of discrimination. It is harmful. Ableist is often annoying in a very particular kind of low grade everyday way. A lot of it just microaggression, but these are, of course, tied to much bigger, more consequential, dehumanizing, and deadly forms of ableism. And like
Mm,
all microaggressions, they accumulate and do long term harm even if they don't draw blood
mm-hmm. Yes,
at
it does.
any given moment.
Right. Now, the 14th Amendment, it should be used to ensure equal protection for those with disability. Now, any American at any stage of life, they could join nearly 1 in 5 of our citizens who has a disability. If people with these disabilities were formally recognized like minority groups, they would constitute the largest minority population in the United States, but they're not. So that presents some difficult legal issues. Now, when it comes to the employment opportunities, education, equality, excuse me, and access to fair benefits, people with disabilities can lack essential constitutional protections. And that's crazy because we had a president who was handicapped.
Right.
And I'll leave that up to the people out there, everybody out there listening to this. If you can tell me who that president was, then I got a secret for you. Anywho, but this thing right here, the legalities, they pay you less than minimum wages if if you have a disability. And you can be denied a job opportunity if an employer has to make an accommodation that is deemed unreasonable, i.e., like in Pennsylvania, it's a right to state. So they have a right to fire you because they don't like the color of jeans you had on. So if that person came into the job and somebody in Pennsylvania, as the supervisor or the person who's doing the hiring, don't want that person there, they have a right to do that. And that to me is crazy. Now, the ABA president, Linda Klein, she is a proponent, and she not only sits on as the president, but she also goes out and advocates for the handicapped. Kudos to you, Linda. You're not just getting a paycheck. You're actually doing something. Now, here's a clause out of the 14th Amendment. While courts have not yet recognized those rights with the disability people or fully protected them under the 14th Amendment, the American Bar Association supports legislation that prohibits discrimination on the basis of disabilities, prohibiting them on their race or sex and all that. But the New York City of Human Rights Law, they are actually in litigation with a company, i.e., who I said earlier, Soft Micro, and they are a billion-dollar company. And how come you don't have accessibility?
Right.
So now we're coming up on our close of our closing on there. So Jazz, go ahead and take over.
Yeah, so lack of accessibility is discrimination. Physically and mentally inaccessible environments, and experiences discriminate against people with disability. Failure to eliminate barriers to disabled people is just as discriminatory as intentionally refusing entry, providing unequal service, or categorically denying opportunities to disabled people. It's the equivalent of a sign on the door reading, "We don't serve disabled people." This is an important concept since discrimination is traditionally thought of as a hostile act between people, not a passive resort or door width, counter heights, and text readability. While accessibility doesn't solve all disabled discrimination, physical construction and design do have a unique power to either perpetrate or eliminate whole categories of disabled all at once. Accessibility is one of the signature aspects of disability rights as compared with most often and other liberational movements. We can substantially reduce disability discrimination just by changing the shape and layout of physical spaces. Pretty much all disability rights are mentioned accessibility. And increasingly, they addressed a wider scope of accessibility, not only in buildings, but in communications and other components of doing business and delivering services. Also, disabled people's lives are viable. This is another abstract principle that's hard to argue with, but becomes more contested when it comes to specifics. It's easy for just anyone to say disabled people are equal or disabled people aren't less than. Relatively few would argue otherwise, at least in so many words. Alias ideas and discriminatory actions kick in when we have to talk about the particular disabled people, what they deserve, what society may or may not owe them, and what actually value disabled people may represent to others.
Wow.
The
Wow.
truth of the matter is that it doesn't matter what any person can or can't do, how productive they are, or how the quality of their lives measure up to the other people's definition of a life worth living. Our value is inherent, not demonstrated or earned. This is one of the reasons why some segments of the disability community are skeptical of capitalism and the work ethic. When people live and their lives are accessed in terms of monetary value and productivity, disabled people are almost always going to be at a disadvantage.
Wow. And see, you know, for these organizations that are set forth to monitor these situations, they're not doing a good job of it. And I think, you know, this is something that, Jazz, we could go on and on about it. But I think, you know, maybe privately you and I can talk about some things as far as, you know, going out, like we talked about today, about going out and doing the homeless thing.
Exactly. And we're not just going to talk about it, we're going to actually put
Actually
action
do it.
to it and do it.
Exactly. And I want to apologize to my viewers, but I don't want to apologize at the same time. There's been things going on in both of our lives that has restricted us to actually doing shows. But from this point on, we have dedication and we know what it is that we need to do. And we have the resources now to be able to present these shows, whether it is live or recorded. So you will have a show each and every day, whether or not it's live or recorded. And more so on my behalf, especially with these last couple of days. Anyways,
Yes, I have something else.
gotcha.
So I'm going to say this, and this is for the disabled people. No single statement of disability rights principles will ever resolve all conflicts or clear up all confusion. Disability culture evolves as all cultures do. That's why it's useful to look at the varieties of sources to understand what the movement is about. That's why revisiting the core argument we too often take for granted is so critical to keeping the disability rights movement fresh and relevant. So always remember, Even though if you don't have a disabled person in your family, down the line they may become disabled.
Mm-hmm.
So
right.
you always treat others how you want to be treated, and just sometimes just think about that if you were in their shoes and how you would want to be treated and what you would want to have access to, as because you're living a normal life. You're not disabled. So just think about if you were a disabled person and how you would want to be treated. So if I was disabled, because I'm not, and I have lived a little bit of life to know how it's not to be disabled, I would want the same thing that I've been doing now to be done if I was disabled. And it bothers me to know that it's not actually the same, and it's not.
Okay. Well, folks, I thank you guys for your time. I thank Jazz for her dedication to the show. Jazz is there and a very dedicated person. As we always end our show, I want to say this, and I mean it from my heart. God loves you, and so do I. There's nothing that you can do about it. Don't let nobody get in between your hopes, your dreams, your aspirations. Because at the end of the day, in the beginning of the day, the only two people that is in control of your destination is you and God. And that is your future and your arrival. If you have a loved one, before you go to sleep tonight, don't have a disagreement. Don't argue without fixing it. Because when they're gone, there's no more. For myself and Jazz in the Table Talk with James and Jazz, we love you.
Thanks for having us. We love you.
Thanks, Jazz.
You're welcome.